Jungkook did not believe in warmth, not in people, not in marriage, and certainly not in love. The 20th floor of Jeon Global Holdings was encased in glass and steel, mirroring the man who ruled it. Jungkook stood with his back to the room, city lights bleeding through the windows like distant stars he had no intention of touching. Sir, the board is asking again, his assistant said carefully. Jungkook didn't turn. They always ask. About an heir. Silence. The word heir felt like a foreign language, one his parents had forced into his mouth before he learned how to want anything for himself. His marriage had been arranged for optics, not affection. Lisa had been perfect on paper, beautiful, famous, untouchable. Cold matched cold. Tell them my private life is not a business strategy, Jungkook said finally, voice even, emotionless. The assistant nodded and left. Jungkook loosened his tie, jaw tightening. He hadn't touched his wife in weeks not because he didn't desire her, but because she recoiled every time the conversation drifted toward children. Lisa didn't hide her disgust. A child would ruin her body. A child would end her runway dominance. A child would chain her. What she never said out loud but always implied was that a child would give her in-laws power over her. That night, the mansion was silent. Lisa sat in front of the vanity, removing her makeup with practiced elegance. Jungkook watched her reflection from the doorway, how carefully she wiped away beauty, how quickly the smile disappeared. They asked again today, he said. Her hand froze. I told you, Lisa replied sharply. I'm not doing this. This? His voice hardened. Or us? She stood, heels clicking as she turned to face him. Don't trap me with a baby, Jungkook. I didn't marry you to become an incubator. The word hit harder than intended. Jungkook exhaled slowly. My parents won't stop. That's not my problem, she snapped. Then softer, calculated, unless you plan to replace me. That was the fear. Not love, not loss. Property, status, power. Jungkook watched her walk away, silk robe swaying, and for the first time in years, something cracked beneath his calm. He did not know that elsewhere, in a cramped servant quarter behind the mansion, a young man named Kim Taehyung sat on a thin mattress, counting the bruises on his arms, listening to his drunken stepfather rage at ghosts. He did not know that their lives were already being stitched together by greed, by fear, by a contract that would turn into something neither of them had asked for but desperately needed. The Jeon family dining hall was designed to intimidate. A table long enough to seat 20 people stretched beneath a chandelier heavy with crystal and legacy. Jungkook sat at its head, posture straight, expression unreadable. Lisa sat to his right, elegant as ever, her smile fixed like a mask she had learned to wear on runways and red carpets. Across from them, Chairman Jeon folded his hands, eyes sharp. Beside him, Madame Jeon dabbed her lips with a napkin, gaze never leaving Lisa. So, Madame Jeon said softly, it has been 3 years. Lisa's fingers tightened around her fork. Jungkook knew what was coming. He always did. Our friends, Chairman Jeon continued, are welcoming grandchildren. The Park family has twins. The Choi family. This isn't a competition, Jungkook interrupted, voice calm but firm. His mother smiled thinly. Everything is a competition when legacy is involved. Lisa laughed lightly, the sound rehearsed. You know my schedule is insane. Paris, Milan, New York. And yet, Madame Jones said, cutting in gently, other women manage. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Jungkook glanced at Lisa. Her jaw was tight, eyes glittering with something close to panic. You married into this family knowing expectations, Chairman Jones said, tone hardening. If you cannot provide an heir, I can, Lisa snapped before she could stop herself. Every head turned. She swallowed. I mean eventually, when the time is right. And when is that? Madame John asked. 35, 40, when your body decides for you. Lisa stood abruptly, chair scraping against marble. Excuse me. She walked out with her head held high, but Jungkook saw what the others missed, the tremor in her hands. He remained seated. If Lisa is unwilling, Chairman Jeon said quietly, there are alternatives. Jungkook's eyes lifted, sharp now. Be careful. Second marriages are not uncommon in our circles, his father replied. Contracts exist for a reason. The word contract lingered in the air like poison. Lisa locked herself inside the master bedroom, pacing. Her phone vibrated. Yura, best friend, did they pressure you again? Lisa typed furiously. They won't stop. They're talking about second marriages. Seconds passed before the reply came. Then, beat them at their own game. Lisa froze. What do you mean? The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Yura, if they want an ear so badly, give them one without destroying your body or career. Lisa's heart began to race. How? Yura, a contract marriage. Temporary. Jungkook marries someone else for a child. Once the baby is born, divorce. You stay legally and financially secure. Lisa stared at the screen. It was insane. It was immoral. It was brilliant. Her breath came shallow as possibilities unfolded in her mind, not love, not betrayal, but survival. Jungkook would never agree. Yura. Men like him always agree when cornered emotionally. Make him believe it's the only way to protect you. Lisa slowly sat on the edge of the bed. Protect me. Yes, that would work. Behind the mansion, near the servants' quarters, Taehyung washed grease from his hands at an outdoor tap. The cold water bit into his skin, grounding him after a long day of driving and repairs. A bottle shattered inside the small house behind him. Useless brat, his stepfather slurred, just like your mother. Taehyung closed his eyes. He had learned long ago not to respond. Pain was temporary. Silence kept him alive. He dried his hands on his worn jeans and sat on the steps, staring up at the mansion lights glowing warmly above him, another world he would never belong to. Or so he thought, because upstairs, in silk sheets and fear, Lisa was already thinking of him. The driver's son, poor, obedient, desperate, perfect. Fear did not arrive loudly. It settled into Lisa's chest like a slow, tightening hand, quiet, patient, suffocating. She stood before the mirror, barefaced now, studying the woman staring back at her. The world saw a supermodel. Brands saw perfection. Cameras loved her. But the Jeon family? They saw a womb that refused to cooperate. Her phone buzzed again. Yura, you need to decide fast. Once parents start suggesting alternatives, you lose control. Lisa sank onto the velvet chair. Her reflection looked smaller like this, less powerful. What if Jungkook leaves me? She whispered to the empty room. Not because she loved him, but because everything she had, status, protection, wealth, was tied to the name Jeon. She remembered the prenup. She had read it once, trembling with excitement back then. Now the clauses replayed in her mind like a threat. Divorce without an heir equals reduced settlement. Divorce initiated by wife equals loss of shares. Her nails dug into her palm. She couldn't let that happen. Downstairs, Jungkook sat alone in his study, lights dim, glass of untouched whiskey on the desk. He stared at the family photo on the wall, his parents, himself, Lisa. Perfect smiles, perfect distance. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't heartless. He was just tired, tired of being pulled apart by expectations, tired of being a disappointment in silence. When Lisa finally entered the room, Jungkook looked up, instantly alert. Her eyes were red not from tears but from restraint. "They'll replace me," she said quietly. Jungkook frowned. "No one is replacing anyone." "You don't understand," she whispered, stepping closer. "They already suggested it. Another woman, aChild." Her voice cracked perfectly at the right place. Jungkook stood. "I won't allow it." Lisa's heart leapt. But he continued, "They won't stop pressuring us." She reached for his sleeve, fingers trembling. "Then protect me." The word hung between them. "You're my husband," she said softly. "If they force you into another marriage, it should be on our terms." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "What are you saying?" Lisa took a breath, as if this cost her everything. "A contract marriage," she said. "Temporary, for aChild. No emotions. Once it's done, everything goes back to normal." The room felt suddenly colder. Jungkook stared at her. "You want me to marry someone else?" "For us," she said quickly. "So we don't lose anything. So they stop pressuring. So I don't lose you." "Lose you." The lie slid smoothly off her tongue. Jungkook turned away, hands pressed against the desk. His reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, cornered. That was how she sold it. As distance, as duty, as sacrifice. Jungkook closed his eyes. He didn't see the trap yet. The next morning, Lisa stood near the servants' quarters, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She watched Taehyung help his stepfather into the house, steadying him, despite the insults slurred in his direction. "Ungrateful trash," the man muttered. "Just like your dead mother." Taehyung said nothing. Lisa felt a flicker of something, not guilt, but assessment. He was tall, strong, quiet. His eyes were too gentle for someone who had lived like this. Perfect. She stepped forward. "Kim Taehyung." He flinched slightly, bowing immediately. "Yes, ma'am." "I need to speak with you," she said calmly, "privately." He hesitated, glancing at the door behind him. "It's about money," she added. That did it. Taehyung followed her to the side garden, heart pounding. Lisa removed her sunglasses. "I'm going to offer you something," she said. "Enough to change your life." His hands clenched. I I don't understand." "You will," she replied smoothly. "But first, tell me." She met his eyes. "How far would you go to escape this place?" Taehyung swallowed. "Very far." Taehyung had learned early that silence kept him alive. So when Lisa asked her question, he didn't answer immediately. He stood still, shoulders tense, eyes lowered, not out of submission, but instinct. Years of drunken rage had trained his body to prepare for impact, even when no blow came. Lisa noticed. Good, she thought. He knows fear. Fear makes people obedient. "I'm listening," she said gently, as if she were doing him a kindness. Taehyung finally spoke. "I don't have many choices, ma'am." She smiled. "That's honesty. I like that." They sat on a stone bench in the garden, far enough from the house that no one could overhear. The sun filtered through manicured trees, beauty built on money and control. Lisa crossed her legs. "Do you know what a contract marriage is?" Taehyung frowned slightly. business marriage.
Her voice was calm, professional. No love, no expectation beyond what is written temporary. His chest tightened. Why are you telling me this? Lisa leaned closer because I need someone healthy, discreet, and expendable. The word hit him like a slap, even though she had not said it cruelly. She continued, my husband needs an heir. I can't give him a. You can, thanks, breathed God. You are asking me to marry him, Lisa said, cutting him off. On paper, for a limited time after the child is born, you live quietly. Silence exploded between them. Taehyung's mind raced, not with disgust but disbelief. People like him did not get offers like this. They got orders. I'm not, he swallowed. I'm not educated. I don't belong in your words. That's why you are perfect, Riza replied without hesitation. No ambitions, no connections, no power. She opened her purse and slid a folder onto the bench. Inside were documents and a number written neatly on the first page. Taehyung's hands began to shake. The amount was more money than he had ever imagined holding. Enough to leave, enough to disappear, enough to never hear his stepfather's voice again. Why me? He asked quietly. Lisa washed his face carefully. Because you are poor and because you won't say no. She was not wrong. That night, Taehyung sat on his mattress, staring at the ceiling as his stepfather snored drunkenly nearby. Be a stranger, give him a child, leave. Simple, clean. But nothing in Taehyung's life had ever been clean. He remembered his mother's voice, soft, apologetic, even she lay dying. Live better than me. A crash jolted him back to reality. His stepfather struggled up, eyes bloodshot. You think you are better than me now? Who? Slap came without warning. Taehyung tasted blood. Useless. Man snarled. Taehyung wiped his mouth slowly, something cold settling in his chest. Yes, he thought. Yes, he thought. I will do it. Not for himself. For her.
Lisa met Yura for drinks that evening, relief blooming in her chest like victory. He'll agree, Lisa said confidently. Yura smirked. Of course he will. Men like him always do. And Jungkook? Lisa asked. Yura's eyes glinted. That's where emotion comes in. Cry if you have to. Make him feel like your protector. Men like him hate being villains. Lisa lifted her glass to survival. They clinked glasses. Poison tasted sweet going down. Jungkook sat alone in the mansion gym, punching bag swaying violently under his blows. Sweat dripped down his temples, breath heavy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The idea of another marriage sat in his gut like a stone, but Lisa's fear had been real or convincing enough to be. When his phone buzzed, he stopped. Lisa, can we talk tonight, please? He stared at the message, then typed back, Jungkook, yes. He didn't know that by saying yes, he had already stepped onto a path that would lead him straight to Kim Taeyang, to kindness he didn't expect, to pain he didn't deserve, to love he would fight and lose to. Jungkook first truly noticed Kim Tae-young on a morning he was already in a foul mood. Board meeting had dragged on too long, his father's voice still echoing in his head, and Lisa had left early for a shoot without a word. Jungkook strode out of the mansion, adjusting his cufflinks, mind sharp with irritation. Car's ready, sir. The voice was low, calm. Jungkook paused mid-step. He turned slightly, eyes landing not on the car but on the young man standing beside it, tall, broad shouldered, dressed simply in a driver's uniform, that looked a size too small, as if life had never quite given him room to grow comfortably. His hair fell into his eyes, softening features that should have belonged to someone freer. Their eyes met. Taehyung immediately lowered his gaze. "I'm Kim Taehyung," he said respectfully. "I'll be driving you today." He turned slightly, eyes landing not on the car but on the young man standing beside it. Jungkook frowned. "Where's Mr. Han?" "He's unwell today, sir." Something in the pause made Jungkook study him more closely. The faint bruise near his jawline, the way his shoulders tensed as if expecting reprimand. "Fine," Jungkook said, opening the door. "Let's go." The drive was silent. Not awkward, just quiet in a way Jungkook rarely experienced. Most people around him filled silence with nervous chatter or forced respect. Taehyung did neither. At a red light, Jungkook noticed his hands on the steering wheel, steady, scarred. "Have you been driving long?" Jungkook asked suddenly. Taehyung startled slightly. "Why, yes, sir. Since I was 19. How old are you now?" 24. Too young to look that tired, Jungkook thought. The car moved again. When they reached the office, Jungkook stepped out, then paused. "Thank you," he said. Taehyung blinked, surprised. "You're welcome, sir." As Jungkook walked away, he felt an unfamiliar tug curiosity, faint but persistent. Later that night, Jungkook found himself in the courtyard, unable to sleep. The air was cool, quiet. A soft sound caught his attention. Someone was sitting near the servants' quarters, guitar resting against their knee. Taehyung. His fingers moved gently over the strings, coaxing out a melody so soft it felt like a confession. Not sad, but aching. Jungkook stood in the shadows, listening. When the song ended, Taehyung exhaled shakily, rubbing his eyes. "You play well," Jungkook said. Taehyung nearly dropped the guitar. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't realize." "You weren't disturbing anyone," Jungkook said. "What was that song?" Taehyung hesitated. "Something my mother used to hum." Something in Jungkook's chest tightened. "She taught you?" Taehyung nodded. "Before she passed." Silence again, but heavier now. Jungkook surprised himself by sitting on the stone bench opposite him. "You miss her?" "Yes," Taehyung answered simply. No dramatics, no self-pity, just truth. Jungkook stood after a moment. "Good night, Taehyung." The way he said his name, without title, without distance, made Taehyung's breath hitch. As Jungkook walked away, he didn't realize that the seed had already been planted. Not desire, not yet. Something far more dangerous. Taehyung stood outside the study door for a long time before knocking. His palms were damp. His heartbeat felt too loud in his ears. The mansion, usually quiet at this hour, felt like it was holding its breath with him. "Come in," Lisa's voice called. He stepped inside. The room smelled expensive leather, perfume, control. Lisa sat behind the desk, composed, elegant, as if she were about to sign a business deal. In truth, she was. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Taehyung obeyed, spine straight, eyes lowered. "I assume you've thought about my offer," Lisa said calmly. "Yes," he replied after a moment. "I have." "And?" Taehyung swallowed. Images flashed in his mind: his stepfather's fist, the cramped room, his mother's exhausted smile before sickness stole her away. "I'll do it," he said quietly. Lisa exhaled, relief flickering across her face. before she masked it. Good. She slid the folder toward him again, opening it this time. This is a legally binding contract, she explained. You will marry my husband under specific terms. You will provide an heir. Once the child is born, the marriage will be dissolved. Taehyung stared at the paper and after, you leave, she said simply. With the money. How much? He asked, voice steady despite the storm inside him. Lisa named the figure again. His breath hitched. It was freedom written in numbers. There's one more condition, she added, eyes sharpening. Absolute obedience. Discretion. You do not speak to Jungkook about why this marriage exists. Taehyung looked up, then, meeting her gaze. Does he know about me? He will, she said, when I'm ready. That was not reassuring. Sign, Lisa said, handing him a pen. Taehyung hesitated only a second before putting his name on the line. With that single stroke, his life split into before and after. That evening, Lisa cried in Jungkook's arms. She chose the moment carefully after dinner, after wine, when his guard was lowest. I'm scared, she whispered, face buried in his chest. What if they force you to leave me? Jungkook stiffened. They won't. They will, she sobbed softly, unless we do something first. He closed his eyes, dread settling deep in his gut. Talk to me, he said quietly. Lisa pulled back, eyes shining with unshed tears. If you take a second wife, temporarily it takes the pressure off us. They get their heir, I keep my body, and you don't lose me. Jungkook's jaw clenched. You're asking too much. I'm asking you to save me, she said. Silence. Then slowly, Jungkook nodded once.
Fine, he said, but I choose the terms. No emotional involvement, no scandal. And the moment this over, it ends. Lisa nodded quickly, hiding her smile against his shoulder. The next morning, Jungkook was called into the study. Lisa stood beside him, composed once more. There's someone I want you to meet, she said. The door opened. Taehyung stepped inside. Jungkook froze.
The driver's son, the quiet musician, the man with bruises, he pretended not to notice. This, Lisa said smoothly, is Kim Tae-young. Jungkook stared at him, disbelief flickering across his face. You're... Yes, sir, Tae-young said, bowing deeply. I've been selected.
Taehyung's finger curled into fist. I do. Jungkook studied him for a long moment, then spoke quietly. This is not kindness, he said. It's survival for all of us. Taehyung bent his eyes. I know. Neither of them realized it yet, but this was the moment their lives truly collided. The contract was signed within 48 hours. Liars moved quietly. Papers were sealed. No disclosure clause talked. Like was everything was clinical, efficient, designed to feel impersonal.
But nothing about it felt impersonal to Jungkook. He stood alone in his office that night, city lights bleeding through the glass again, staring at the copy of the contract in his hands. His name, Taehyung's name, dates, conditions, a human life reduced to timelines, a marriage reduced to ink. His phone buzzed. Lisa. He didn't answer immediately. When he finally did, her voice was soft, too soft. You're distant. I'm thinking, Jungkook replied. About leaving me? She asked quietly. The accusation slipped in smoothly. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Don't do that. I'm scared, she said. I already feel like I'm being replaced. He exhaled sharply. This was your idea, and I hate myself for it, she whispered. But if I lose you, if your parents succeed, I don't survive that. There it was, not love, dependence. Jungkook rubbed his temples. I agreed. What more do you want? Reassurance, Lisa said, that you won't fall for him. The words settled heavily. I won't, Jungkook replied automatically. Lisa smiled on the other end of the line. Promise? Jungkook hesitated just a fraction too long. I promise, he said anyway. Taehyung moved into the east wing the next day, a room larger than the entire space he'd lived in his whole life. Soft bed, private bathroom, silence that didn't come with fear. He stood in the center of the room, unsure what to touch first. This isn't yours, he reminded himself. Nothing here is yours. That night, Jungkook knocked on his door. Taehyung opened it immediately, heart racing. Yes, sir? Jungkook's gaze swept over him, plain clothes, nervous posture, eyes that gave away too much. Sit, Jungkook said, entering. Taehyung obeyed, perching on the edge of the bed. Jungkook remained standing. We need to set boundaries. Yes, this arrangement is not affection, Jungkook continued. Not companionship. We will be civil, respectful, nothing more. Taeyang nodded. I understand. Jungkook studied him. Do you? Yes, Taeyang said softly. I don't expect anything. Something twisted painfully in Jungkook's chest at the way he said it, like someone who had never expected kindness to begin with. There will be intimacy, Jungkook said, voice lower now, controlled, only when necessary. If you're uncomfortable. I won't be, Taehyung said quickly. Too quickly. Jungkook's eyes darkened. That wasn't an order. Taehyung swallowed. I just, I don't want to cause trouble. Jungkook looked away. That was the moment he realized. Taehyung didn't know how to say no. Alone, Taehyung sank onto the edge of his new bed. He had everything he had ever wanted: security, safety, the means to leave his past behind. And yet, a part of him felt hollow, because freedom had come at the cost of his own agency, his own dignity. That night, Jungkook passed Taehyung's door. He heard movement inside, Taehyung unpacking, humming softly a tune he hadn't realized Jungkook would notice. The sound struck something deep inside him. Not anger, not irritation, something else. Interest. He lingered for a heartbeat longer, then walked away, mind racing, because he knew, though he would not admit it, that the quiet driver's son had already begun to invade the cold, guarded walls he had built around himself. And the contract, so clear on paper, was about to become infinitely more complicated. The first week of their cohabitation was tense. Jungkook observed Taehyung carefully, noting every action, every word, every glance. He was the kind of man who didn't tolerate mistakes lightly, and Taehyung was acutely aware of this. Taehyung moved quietly through the mansion, performing the tasks expected of him with precision. He greeted Jungkook with respect, maintained impeccable manners, and avoided drawing unnecessary attention. Yet his natural warmth and subtle kindness began to emerge, small actions, unnoticed by Lisa but quietly observed by Jungkook. One morning, Jungkook found Taehyung in the kitchen, carefully preparing breakfast. The man's hands moved with care, the food neatly arranged, the aroma filling the room. Jungkook, who usually ignored domestic matters entirely, found himself watching silently. Why bother? He asked, his voice cold, yet curious. Taehyung looked up, meeting his gaze. Because it is expected, sir, and because I like to do it. His voice was calm, humble, yet carried a quiet conviction that resonated more than words. Jungkook didn't reply immediately. He wasn't used to observing people who acted out of care rather than obligation. There was something about Taehyung, unassuming, genuine, steady, that intrigued him, though he would never admit it aloud. The rain fell softly that evening, streaking the mansion windows with silver trails. Jungkook lingered in the hallway outside the east wing, drawn by the sound of quiet sobs. He hesitated. He shouldn't intrude. This was not his business, yet something compelled him forward.
Inside, Taeyong sat on the floor near the window, knees down to his chest. His hands were trembling as he held a faded photograph, a woman smiling softly, her hand resting on his small shoulder. Jungkook stepped closer, voice low. Who is she? Taeyong flinched but did not look up. My mother, he whispered, before everything.
Before what? Jungkook asked gently. Taehyung swallowed, eyes glassy. After she died, my stepfather, he paused, taking a shuddering breath. He was angry a lot, drunk. I learned to hide. Jungkook's chest tightened. The quiet strength he had noticed before now took on a new dimension. Every small gesture, every careful action, wasn't just diligence, it was survival. Why are you telling me this? Jungkook asked, voice rougher than intended. Taeyang finally looked up, eyes shimmering with vulnerability. Because I have no one else. For the first time, Jungkook saw the depth of pain he had ignored. The scars beneath the obedience, beneath the calm demeanor. And for the first time, he felt something stir, not curiosity, but protectiveness. Taehyung, Jungkook's voice softened. You don't have to face it alone. Taehyung blinked, startled. I'm fine. You're not fine, Jungkook said firmly. But I can help, if you let me. Taehyung's hands trembled as he clutched the photo. I, I don't know how to be helped. Jungkook stepped closer, kneeling so he was at eye level. Then let me show you, step by step. You don't have to be perfect. For a long moment, the only sounds were the rain, the soft hum of the city outside, and the quiet, uneven breaths of two men on the edge of something neither fully understood. Taeyang nodded slightly, not out of surrender, but acknowledgement. The first wall had cracked, and Jungkook realized, with a chill he couldn't hide, that the young man sitting before him, so quiet, so unassuming, was about to change everything. That night, Jungkook returned to his own room, restless and shaken. Every act of care Taeyang had shown over the past days, the folded uniforms, the quiet meals, the small attentions, made sense now. They weren't just habits, they were survival mechanisms. And every survival mechanism he witnessed made Jungkook's chest ache with something new, something he had buried beneath ambition, control, and duty. Something that resembled affection, dangerous, complicated, unwanted, and yet impossible to ignore. The mansion had grown quieter in the days following Jungkook's discovery of Taehyung's past. Yet in that quiet, subtle shifts began to take shape. Small moments of care, unintentional touches, lingering glances, each one a thread pulling at the careful boundaries of the contract. It started with breakfast. Taehyung had prepared Jungkook's coffee just the way he liked it, black, no sugar, slightly bitter. Jungkook had paused, noticing for the first time the way Taehyung had remembered. Thank you, he said quietly, voice low. Taehyung looked up, eyes briefly meeting his before he bowed. You're welcome, sir. It should have ended there. It did not. It started with breakfast. Taehyung had prepared Jungkook's coffee just the way he liked it, black, no sugar, slightly bitter. Jungkook had paused, noticing for the first time the way Taehyung had remembered. Thank you, he said quietly, voice low. Taehyung looked up, eyes briefly meeting his before he bowed. You're welcome, sir. It should have ended there. It did not. It helps. Jungkook asked, stepping closer. Yes, sir, Taehyung said softly. It it makes the world quieter. The admission, so simple, so human, struck Jungkook like a blow. He turned away abruptly, pacing. Control, duty, contract, all meaningless when confronted with vulnerability this raw. One night, Jungkook caught himself lingering outside Taehyung's door, watching the young man sleep unaware. The thought shocked him. Why am I even here? But when Taehyung shifted in his sleep, muttering softly, a blanket slipping from his shoulder, Jungkook realized he didn't want to leave. Not yet. Because control had never felt so irrelevant. Because the lines of the contract, so precise on paper, had already begun to blur. And Jungkook hated it. And yet, he couldn't look away. The storm hit that night with a sudden ferocity. Rain pounded against the mansion windows, lightning flashing across the sky, illuminating the darkened halls in jagged bursts. Taeyang had been called to Jungkook's suite, officially, the first necessity under the terms of the contract. Official, clinical, emotionless. But, standing in the doorway, drenched from the rain, he felt his chest tighten. His hands shook slightly, not from cold, but anticipation, fear, and a strange flutter of something he refused to name. Jungkook's eyes, sharp and calculating, met his. No warmth, no hesitation, but the storm outside mirrored the storm inside Taehyung. Come in, Jungkook said quietly, voice low and firm. Taehyung stepped forward, closing the door behind him. He tried to steady his breath, tried to control the nervous tremor in his fingers, tried to remind himself this is a contract, nothing more. Jungkook watched him silently, noting every small movement, the way Taehyung's shoulders tensed, the subtle rise and fall of his chest, the quick flicker of his eyes when the candlelight caught them. Sit, Jungkook finally said, gesturing to the chair. Taehyung obeyed, heart hammering in his chest. This is necessary, Jungkook said evenly. You understand the terms.
I understand, Taehyung whispered. They moved slowly through the motions, clinical, mechanical. But with every shared touch, every accidental brush of fingers, tension built a tension neither could ignore. Jungkook's control, always precise and unyielding, faltered slightly as he noticed Taehyung's quiet vulnerability. Vulnerability hidden behind obedience, behind calmness, behind survival.
And for the first time, he did not want to retreat. Taeyong, on the other hand, felt the line between duty and desire blur. He reminded himself again, this is contract, just a duty. But when Jungkook's gaze softened for the briefest of moments, when his hands lingered a fraction too long, something inside Taeyong shivered. A flash of warmth, a pang of something forbidden.
The storm outside intensified. Rain drummed against the windows. Thunder rumbled like a warning. And inside the room, the boundaries of the contract began to crack. Neither could ignore the subtle pull, the undeniable tension, the fragile line between obligation and desire. When it was over, they sat in silence, drenched in more than just rain. Taehyung's chest heaved with confusion. Jungkook's jaw was tight with restraint, and both knew without speaking that nothing about this contract would ever be simple again. The mansion was silent the next morning, but Jungkook's mind was anything but. He couldn't shake the image of Taehyung from the previous night, the subtle tremor in his hands, the hesitation in his gaze, the quiet surrender that had never belonged to anyone but him. Curiosity had become an obsession. That night, Jungkook couldn't sleep. He replayed every word, every gesture, every small tremor and careful movement. The mansion, once a place of rigid control and business, had begun to feel alive with Taehyung's presence, with his quiet strength, with his humanity. And Jungkook understood, with both fear and fascination, that he could no longer separate duty from desire, contract from emotion. He wanted to protect him, to claim him, to care. Something dangerous, irreversible, and utterly consuming. The mansion was quiet in the early hours, but the world inside the East Wing was anything but. Jungkook found himself standing outside Taehyung's room again, a pattern he hadn't intended. He told himself it was curiosity, control, but the truth was far more complicated. Inside, Taehyung was seated on the floor, quietly reading a book he had found in the mansion's library. His brow was furrowed in concentration, lips moving slightly as he read. The faint light from the table lamp highlighted the curve of his jaw, the softness of his features, and the subtle tension in his shoulders, a tension that never seemed to leave him. Jungkook watched silently, unmoving. The clock ticked. The air was heavy with something unspoken. You read a lot, Jungkook said quietly, stepping into the room. Taehyung looked up instantly, startled but relaxed when he saw it was Jungkook. Yes, sir, it keeps my mind busy, he said softly. Jungkook nodded, moving closer. What are you reading? A novel about survival, Taehyung admitted, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. It reminds me that pain can be overcome. Jungkook said nothing, watching him carefully. The quiet resilience, the subtle courage, the softness hidden beneath layers of strength, it was intoxicating, dangerous, unsettling. Do you ever let anyone in? Jungkook asked finally, voice low, almost hesitant. Taehyung's gaze dropped. I don't know how, he whispered. I've spent my whole life hiding, sir. Jungkook moved closer, sitting beside him on the floor. It was unplanned, impulsive, something he didn't expect and yet didn't resist. You can, Jungkook said softly, with me, if you want. No judgment, no pretense. Taehyung's eyes flicked up, searching Jungkook's face. For a moment, fear and hope collided there. Then, slowly, he leaned slightly toward him, not physically, but emotionally, bridging the distance in a way that no contract could dictate. Silence followed, comfortable and heavy. Jungkook's hand twitched as he almost reached out, almost brushing Taehyung's shoulder, but stopped himself. Too much, too soon. And yet, the unspoken connection hung in the air, fragile, tender, dangerous. Both of them realized that this marriage arranged, forced, transactional was beginning to twist into something neither had planned. Meanwhile, Lisa had begun to notice changes she had not anticipated. The careful way Jungkook observed Taehyung, the moments of hesitation when considering the man's actions, and the subtle warmth creeping into his otherwise cold demeanor irritated her. One evening, she confronted Taehyung while he organized books in the study. Do you see what you're doing? She hissed, her voice sharp. You think you can win him over? You're a pawn, Taehyung, just a tool in my plan. Remember that. Taehyung swallowed hard, his heart pounding. I understand, ma'am, he said softly. Yet the words felt hollow even to him. Taehyung swallowed hard, his heart pounding. I understand, ma'am, he said softly. Yet the words felt hollow even to him. Lisa's frustration grew as her subtle manipulations began to falter. She had underestimated the quiet strength in Taehyung's character and the unspoken bond forming between him and Jungkook. The East Wing was palpable. Jungkook couldn't sleep. He hadn't been able to for nights, not since the small moments of connection had begun, the quiet breakfasts, the shared silences, the subtle gestures that spoke volumes more than words ever could. He found himself outside Taehyung's room again, unable to resist the pull he didn't want to name. A soft knock, almost inaudible. Come in, Taehyung's voice called. Jungkook stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. Taehyung sat on the edge of his bed, hands clasped together tightly, eyes focused on the floor. The candlelight flickered across his features, highlighting the faint tension around his jaw and the shadows under his eyes. I couldn't sleep, Jungkook admitted quietly. Taehyung nodded slightly, silent, waiting. Jungkook hesitated. He had always been in control, always precise, always calculated. Yet here he felt unsteady, vulnerable, human. I I know this is a contract, Jungkook began, voice low, cautious, but he stopped, frustrated. Words always seemed insufficient when it came to Taehyung. Taehyung looked up then, eyes wide, soft, waiting. You're not just a part of this arrangement, Jungkook continued, finally, voice steadying. You matter more than I expected, more than I should admit. Taehyung's chest tightened. He didn't speak immediately. His heart raced, a mixture of fear and hope. You mean something to me too, he whispered, voice barely audible. Even though, even though I shouldn't. The words hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. Jungkook closed the distance between them slowly, cautiously. Neither of us should feel this way, he murmured. And yet, Taehyung's breath hitched. And yet, he echoed, finishing the thought without knowing he had. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. No touches, no promises, just raw, unguarded emotion flowing silently between them. The mansion was silent that night, yet the tension in the east wing was palpable. Jungkook couldn't sleep. He hadn't been able to for nights, not since the small moments of connection had begun, the quiet breakfasts, the shared silences, the subtle gestures that spoke volumes more than words ever could. He found himself outside Taehyung's room again, unable to resist the pull he didn't want to name. They sat like that, inches apart, neither daring to break the fragile connection, both silently acknowledging the danger of what they felt. And in that moment, the mansion around them, the contracts, the obligations, the schemes, felt irrelevant, because for the first time they were not husband and husband for contract. They were two souls teetering on the edge of desire, trust, and something deeper, more complicated than either had anticipated. And there was no turning back. The following days passed in a haze of tension, quiet moments, and stolen glances. Jungkook couldn't focus at work. Each time Taehyung appeared in the east wing, pouring coffee just the way he liked it, straightening papers, or quietly humming to himself, the pull inside Jungkook tightened like a coil ready to snap. Taehyung, on the other hand, struggled to reconcile duty with the burgeoning desire he had tried so hard to ignore. Every glance from Jungkook, every subtle touch, sent shivers down his spine, leaving him restless, yearning, and terrified. That night, Jungkook found Taehyung in the library, curled up with a blanket and a book. He watched silently from the doorway, heart pounding, as the young man's lashes fluttered in sleep, lips slightly parted, chest rising and falling in quiet rhythm. Something in Jungkook's chest twisted. He wanted no, needed to protect him, to claim him, to touch him, to make sure he was safe and his vulnerability remained unseen by the cruel world outside. He crossed the room, slowly, deliberately, hands trembling as he reached for the blanket. Taehyung stirred, eyes fluttering open. Sir, he whispered, voice husky and unsure. Jungkook crouched slightly, brushing a strand of hair from his face. You shouldn't be out here alone, he murmured. Not in the night. Not like this. Taehyung's cheeks flushed, but he didn't move away. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. Jungkook's gaze softened, the control he usually wielded, giving way to something far more dangerous. Neither could I, he admitted. Their hands brushed, lingering. The charged silence between them was thick with temptation.
Every glance, every breath, every small contact threatened to dismantle the walls they had built so carefully. We can't, Taehyung began, but Jungkook silenced.
I know, Jungkook whispered, but wanting isn't a crime, feeling isn't a crime, and ignoring it is impossible. Taehyung's chest rose and fell rapidly. Then, what do we do? Jungkook hesitated, then leaned just close enough that their foreheads almost touched. We take it slowly, he said, voice husky. A shiver ran through Taehyung as he nodded, understanding the dangerous, delicious truth. The mansion was silent, but the east wing was anything but. Temptation had arrived, and with it, the delicate boundaries between restraint and surrender began to blur. The next morning, Lisa realized that her influence was slipping. She had tried subtle manipulations, whispered suggestions, and even threats, but Jungkook no longer responded as he once had. Determined to regain control, Lisa confronted Jungkook in his office, her voice sharp and commanding. "Do not forget your obligations," she hissed. "This marriage, this house, they are not yours to manipulate." Jungkook, calm but resolute, stood to face her. "Lisa, enough," he said firmly. "I know what you planned. I know your schemes, but they no longer matter. Taehyung is not a tool. He is not part of your plan. He is part of my life, and you will not interfere anymore." Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief. She had never seen Jungkook stand up to her like this. Her power, once absolute, had crumbled in the face of his emotions. Taehyung, entering the office quietly, stood beside Jungkook, silent but unwavering. His presence alone was a testament to the bond they now shared. Lisa faltered, realizing that the connection between them could not be broken by manipulation, money, or threats. In the days that followed, Jungkook and Taehyung navigated their relationship with a newfound honesty. The mansion, once a place of cold efficiency and tense observation, began to feel like home. They shared quiet dinners, long walks in the garden, and small, unspoken acts of care. Jungkook, who had once believed that love was a vulnerability, began to understand that it could also be a source of strength. Taehyung pressed a trembling hand against his stomach as the bathroom door clicked shut behind him. The test strip lay on the marble counter. 2 lines. Clear, unforgiving, life-changing. His breath shook as he sank to the floor, back against the cabinet, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. He hadn't told anyone, not Jungkook, not the doctor beyond the confirmation. Not even himself, because admitting it meant accepting how deep he had already fallen. A child, Jungkook's child, and it terrified him more than his stepfather's fists ever had, because this time he had something to lose. From that day on, Taehyung moved differently. He avoided strong smells. He grew nauseous in the mornings. His appetite changed, his body slower, softer in ways he didn't understand yet. He told Jungkook it was stress. Jungkook noticed. The way Taehyung flinched when tired, the way his hands unconsciously protected his stomach, the way his eyes held a quiet fear mixed with something achingly tender. But before Jungkook could ask, Lisa struck. Lisa had always believed control was power, and power, once tasted, was impossible to surrender. She stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in her dressing room, adjusting the diamond necklace resting against her flawless skin. Her reflection stared back perfect, polished, untouchable. Yet beneath the designer fabric and carefully painted confidence, something ugly twisted inside her chest. Fear, because Jungkook was changing. He no longer came to her room at night. He no longer asked about her shoots or her shows. His eyes, once distant but obedient, now softened only when they followed him. Kim Taehyung, the poor boy she had chosen like a disposable tool. Lisa's fingers curled tightly around her phone as she dialed a familiar number. "Meet me," she said sharply when the call connected. Now, her friend Yura arrived an hour later, heels clicking against the marble floors of the mansion. Lisa poured wine, her hands trembling just slightly. "He's slipping away," Lisa said, her voice low. "Jungkook." Yura raised a brow. "Because of the boy?" Lisa's jaw tightened. "Because he's forgetting his place." You leaned forward, intrigued. "So, what's the plan?" Her friend Yura arrived an hour later, heels clicking against the marble floors of the mansion. Lisa poured wine, her hands trembling just slightly. "He's slipping away," Lisa said, her voice low. "Jungkook." Yura raised a brow. "Because of the boy?" Lisa's jaw tightened. "Because he's forgetting his place." Yu leaned forward, intrigued. "So, what's the plan?" "I'll accuse him of taking money," Lisa said calmly. "Say he planned to trap Jungkook. That the child was part of his greed." Yura laughed softly. "And Jungkook?" "He hates lies," Lisa said. "If he doubts Taehyung even once, it's over." What Lisa didn't see was there is someone standing quietly outside the partially open door, phone in hand, recording everything. That evening, Lisa struck. She waited until Jungkook returned from work, exhaustion etched into his sharp features. Taehyung was in the kitchen, quietly preparing tea, unaware of the storm about to crash into his life. Lisa walked into the living room dramatically, tears already prepared. "Jungkook," she whispered, voice shaking. "I didn't want to believe it." Jungkook paused. "Believe what?" Lisa handed him the phone. "Taehyung, he's been meeting someone, taking money, planning to leave after the child." The room went silent. Taehyung froze, the cup slipping from his hands and shattering against the floor. "What?" he whispered, pale. "That's not true." Jungkook's gaze lifted slowly, unreadable. "Is it?" Taehyung's chest tightened. "I would never, I swear." Lisa sobbed. "I trusted him too, Jungkook, but he used us." For a moment, a single, terrifying moment, Taehyung thought he saw doubt flicker in Jungkook's eyes. And it broke him. Before Jungkook could speak, the doors opened. The head maid stepped forward, followed by Jungkook's secretary and Yora herself, dragged along by security, face drained of color. "Sir," the maid said firmly, holding out her phone, "you need to hear this." The recording played. Lisa's voice filled the room. "We make Jungkook believe Taehyung betrayed him. Fake messages, fake proof. Once he doubts him, it's over." The color drained from Lisa's face. "Stop it," she screamed. "That's fake." Mina collapsed. "Lisa, you promised." Jungkook's hands clenched slowly into fists. He didn't look at Lisa. He walked to Taehyung instead. Gently, carefully, he placed his hands on Taehyung's trembling shoulders. "We make Jungkook believe Taehyung betrayed him. Fake messages, fake proof. Once he doubts him, it's over." The color drained from Lisa's face. "Stop it," she screamed. "That's fake." Mina collapsed. "Lisa, you promised." Jungkook's hands clenched slowly into fists. He didn't look at Lisa. He walked to Taehyung instead. Gently, carefully, he placed his hands on Taehyung's trembling shoulders. "Get out," Jungkook said coldly. Lisa laughed hysterically. "You can't be serious, after everything I've done for you." "You manipulated me," Jungkook said. "You abused power. You treated a human being like a product." She stepped forward. "I'm your wife." "No," he replied sharply. "You were my mistake." The words hit harder than any slap. Jungkook pulled out a folder from the table, papers already prepared. "I'm filing for divorce," he said, "effective immediately." Lisa stared. "You'll lose your reputation." "I'll keep my soul," he answered. Security escorted her out as she screamed, her heels echoing like broken glass against marble. The mansion was quiet. Taehyung sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. Jungkook knelt in front of him. "You're safe now." Taehyung swallowed hard. "There's something I haven't told you." Jungkook frowned gently. "What is it?" Taehyung took Jungkook's hand and placed it over his stomach. "I found out days ago," he whispered. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Jungkook's breath caught. Then his eyes softened, filled with awe, fear, love all at once. You're carrying my child?" Jungkook pulled him into his arms, holding him like something sacred. I choose you, he said firmly, both of you. For the first time in his life, Taehyung felt it. Not survival, not a contract, but home. Morning light filled the quiet house, warm and gentle. Taehyung sat by the window, laughing softly as small fingers curled around his. Their child, bright-eyed, curious, perfect, gurgled happily, cheeks round with sleep and dreams. Life felt unreal sometimes, like a miracle he was still learning to trust. Jungkook watched them from the doorway, coffee forgotten in his hand. Once he had built empires of glass and steel. Now his world was right here. Taehyung's smile, the steady rise and fall of their child's breath, the peace he never knew he needed. He crossed the room and pressed a kiss to Taehyung's temple. You okay? He asked, voice soft. Taehyung nodded, eyes shining. I've never been better. Their child squealed as Jungkook lifted them, strong arms turning laughter into music. The past contracts, lies, fear felt distant now, like a storm that had finally passed. Jungkook met Taehyung's gaze and smiled, a smile that reached his eyes. Thank you, he said simply, for choosing us. Taehyung leaned into him. We chose each other. Outside, the day began ordinary, beautiful, theirs, and in that quiet home, love settled in for good. Happily, ever after.